Hi, everybody. This is Carolina Quesada with the Nonprofit Partnership. And I'm here again today, live on Facebook, and really excited to have a very good friend of ours joining us today. We're bringing you another interview in our series called Our Stories, Our Time. And this is where we interview nonprofit leaders to understand how the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting their work, impacting their programs and services. And let me just say that we fully understand that keeping connected to one another right now really matters. And we believe that by highlighting stories of nonprofit heroes, nonprofit directors, nonprofit professionals, that we are really capturing what's happening right now during our time and how organizations are navigating. So today we are joined by David Leonard, who's the Executive Director of New Hope Grief Support Community. David, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you.
Yeah, my pleasure to be here with you guys. And thank you guys for asking me to be here this afternoon with you. I'm really grateful to be able to just be live with you guys and to share, what's happening, not just for us, but for a lot of nonprofits.
Thanks, David. And let me just say that before we get started, because I do have an opening question for you. For those watching live, you are welcome to ask David any questions. All you have to do is just type them into the comment box, and we'll be reading those off. Or if you just want to say hi to David as well, we accept greetings. So, David, for those who don't really know much about New Hope Grief Support Community, tell us more about your organization, what you do.
Yeah, thank you. So New Hope Grief Support Community, and we go by New Hope for short. Our mission is to bring hope and healing into the lives of bereaved children and families, and we do that through connection and support. And so, losing a loved one is definitely a universal experience, but also can have a lot of, sometimes it's taboo, and we're not really encouraged to talk about the feelings that come with grief or to face them head on. And so New Hope really for the last 17 years has been standing in the gap and being an advocate for bereaved children and families here in the greater Long Beach area. And the way that we're able to support children and families who are grieving is through peer-led support groups. We do it through family camps that we do on the weekends. And then we host a series of workshops and other learning opportunities for bereaved people to come out and really find hope and find that healing and encouragement that they need to get through. We say here at New Hope, and it's funny because during COVID-19, this rings truer than ever, but that we suffer in isolation, Carolina, and we begin to find healing in community. And so really that is what we long to do. And our ultimate vision is to see bereaved children and families leading healthy and flourishing lives after loss, as they define that new normal for themselves.
David, your point about not suffering in isolation is something I'd really like for us to come back to as well, because you're absolutely right. I mean, it is in so many ways really highlighting where a lot of people are at this point. Alone, isolated, perhaps, just watching TV, and that's how they're getting a lot of the information that's out there. So I'd really like for us to come back to that. But I wanted to ask about how New Hope has been really dealing with or addressing the change from engaging in person to now having to move everything online, because I'm assuming you're using Zoom or perhaps other platforms to engage online. Can you talk to us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, like a lot of the sector, right, when the stay-at-home order kind of went into full effect and we were realizing the implications of COVID-19, we quickly had to adapt and figure out how were we going to continue to allow people to connect, but not being able to do it in person. And so our team got together with our board of directors, and we were able to quickly figure out how to pivot and adapt to using Zoom and other tools you described to keep people connected. And so we actually had a few groups that were already happening that were meeting live. And so we had to quickly convert them into a Zoom group, which was a bit of a challenge. The first and foremost thing we had to do, though, was really get so all of our support groups are led by volunteers, many of which have gone through our program. Then they come back and then they get trained and they lead, and they're equipped to lead our groups. And it makes sense because a lot of them have had their own losses. But we have a range of volunteers, right, in terms of ages. We have millennials and baby boomers and Gen Xers. And so their skill sets around technology and comfort level with it varied. And so I think the biggest challenge was for us being able to create a training mechanism, if you will, to quickly onboard them to how they were going to be able to utilize Zoom to lead groups going forward. We've also utilized other apps like GroupMe. The GroupMe app has been helpful. So thankfully, we had already been using GroupMe for our live groups. That's how they would stay connected throughout the week to send messages of encouragement and support. So that has also really been exacerbated, right, in being able to use that tool to continue to press in harder into community. So, but that's how we've pivoted. And through this, what we actually learned in the training, this was one of the big eye-opening things we learned, Carolina, was our facilitators themselves, because of what's going on, were expressing how some of their old grief had been triggered by this.
Wow.
Being alone. Some of our facilitators are widows, and they've been widowed for several years, but they're also in their 60s. And so now they used to see their grandchildren once a week or their kids once a week, and all that, in an instant stopped happening. And so they found themselves back home alone, and they were feeling and sharing that they were feeling, it almost felt like the early days of after their spouse died, when that grief and that dark place and those clouds kind of shadowed them. And so what we decided to do in terms of pivoting and getting creative and innovative, because I think definitely we have seen some great innovation happening during this time, is we created what are called stay-at-home groups. Now, again, our mission has been to serve bereaved children, families, and individuals, but what we also recognize is that people are isolated and alone, and the discomfort you're feeling is grief. And some of it's anticipatory grief, which means we know something bad is happening or something out there, and in this case, you really can't see it. It's a virus. And all the implications that come with that. We can start to worry and get anxiety and depression. So we launched these stay-at-home groups, we're calling them, and we did the first pilot with our facilitators, our volunteers. And
wow.
We got together on a Thursday night, jumped in the Zoom room, myself and Chris Cano, our program manager, facilitated it, and it was amazing. And people were able to still be authentic and be vulnerable. And at the end, they were like, that was amazing. And we got to offer this to the public. So we were like, and who in the room would like to lead it? And so we had several volunteers come forward. We had our very first stay-at-home support group a week ago. We had our second one last night. And every week they're filling up. And we have new people reaching out to register. And those groups are free. A little plug-in. Those groups are free. If you go to our Instagram, social media accounts, our website, you can find their Thursday nights starting at 7 p.m. And all you got to do is register, and we will help provide live support for people who are feeling isolated and need to connect with other humans that are having the same feelings and going through this COVID-19 stay-at-home order.
So, David, in order to then be a part of a group like this, are there any particular requirements, though, or are you looking to profile or target particular individuals? Like, do you have to be home alone, or what? How are you reaching out to folks?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have definitely expanded, right? Again, our regular bereavement groups are for those who are bereaved, whereas these groups are not. We are really trying to address this idea and this notion, Carolina, that people are at home and they're suffering in isolation and alone and scared and have all those feelings that are coming with this. And what we want to remind them is that, hey, everything you're feeling is absolutely normal and you're not alone in that. And so who we've seen registering for the groups are people from all walks of life, every generation, crossing all socioeconomic boundaries. It does not matter. Really, the requirement is like you're saying to yourself, I'm not having a good day or a few good days because I'm stuck at home and I'm feeling like I'm not supported and I don't have a group of people to connect to that will understand where I'm coming from. And again, keep in mind the group is facilitated by our folks who are trained, and they're leading people through a healthy conversation. and giving them a safe place to share free of judgment about how they're feeling. And then also we are offering, ideas and tips on how they can cope. Because again, all those feelings are normal, but it's how we're responding to those feelings that's most important.
Yeah.
And so again, if you're hearing this or you're watching this and maybe you're saying, man, I have been struggling, it has been hard. Hey, it's okay. You're not alone. I've been struggling. I'm sure, your friends and your neighbors and your family have been struggling. So that sounds like something that's resonating. I really want to encourage you. I personally invite you to reach out. We'd love to journey with you through that.
That's great. Thank you. And we'll make sure to also, if we can, make that post contact information or reach out to the organization and sign up. And I'm assuming as well, for whatever reason, either you meet capacity for these groups or maybe folks need more resources, that you're also prepared to share other kinds of resources, right? As well.
Yeah. So your original question was like, what have you had to do to change kind of your operations and things? Another piece of this that people, it's not that they're forgetting it, but with so much in the news about just COVID-19, I want to remind folks that people are still dying of other causes, right? And people are still grieving the loss of a loved one who had cancer before this, who might have had a massive heart attack or some other chronic illness. And so the big piece for a lot of folks right now is, how do we have a funeral? How do we have a memorial service in a time when we can't gather? And so leading to resources on our website, we've actually created a resource page just for this. Some of it is to help people in isolation, and a lot of it from other practitioners in the field of bereavement that we're partnered with. We're providing toolkits and handbooks and great ideas on how you can actually, have a memorial and have some form of a funeral, and what are you going to do to honor the life and legacy of your loved one. And so that's a whole nother resource page we didn't have before. Now we're having to create that,
right,
because of what's happening. And again,
right.
You got to adapt, and you got to be willing to think about what we're trying hard to do as a team. We have a weekly staff meeting, and we're asking ourselves, what are we missing? That's what we're really asking. What are we missing? Like, okay, we've innovated last week and we've met a need. What other piece of this puzzle are we missing? What other ways can we be relevant? What other ways can we bring support into people's homes? Because I think sometimes, Carolina, the easy thing is to throw your hands up and surrender. And just be like, it's too hard. Like, there's lots of other people doing lots of great stuff. I see it on social media and all that. Like, there's no place for us here. But our team is taking the complete opposite approach and saying, no, if there's any time that our community needs us, that the most vulnerable in our community need us, it's now. And so we want to make sure that we're staying relevant, doing it in a way that allows folks from all backgrounds and all technological abilities to be able to reach out and receive the support in that virtual hug.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right. Are you finding that you're still using phone trees to reach out to folks as well, in addition to, like the email reminders, get on social media? I mean, there's still the phone tree.
Yeah, we're kicking it old school too. Absolutely. I've been on the phone more now. I'm sure, other executive directors and fundraising folks, I've been calling all our donors. I've been calling our stakeholders, our community partners, and just checking in and really just say, how you doing? And telling them about our stay-at-home groups. I've been amazed actually at how many of our stakeholders and community partners have wanted to participate or know someone who needs that group. But it's been really just a breath of fresh air, because quite frankly, we are not usually have the time like we do now. Not to say we're not busy, because we are very busy, but to really invest in those relationships.
Yeah.
We call and check in. And spend more than 5-10 minutes on the phone. I mean, some of these calls for myself, I'm spending, half an hour, 45 minutes with people just really checking in and being attentive and being fully present and listening. And that in itself has been a gift. To do that with people and hear where they're at and receive that and provide that empathy, really, to get down in the hole with them and be with them. So, trees are important.
Yes, and thank you for that. One of the things we've also been hearing about is how even during these times, and certainly you're illustrating how you have had and you have actually made a shift, and you've incorporated other things, other areas, other modalities to continue the work, and continue to keep connected to others as well, which is so important. Now, I know that for New Hope, your core of volunteers is in so many ways like your lifeblood, because you really rely on your wonderful volunteers that, bring such a rich experience and a lot of experiences into the work that they're doing. What was the transition like with them, David? Tell us about how you had to engage with them to kind of, again, work with groups in ways that they haven't been working with them before.
Yeah, I'd like to be very transparent. In the beginning, several of our more veteran facilitators were very apprehensive about this process and about using digital tools to meet, right? To meet virtually. Because some of our volunteers have been with us over a decade.
Wow.
So they are very pro and very versed in what they do, but they also recognize and rely heavily on that human connection, to be able to read body language in the room, to be able, it's a support group. So you got to be able to read everybody in the room, and you can tell through body language and how they're sitting, what they're feeling that night, what's going on. And so some of them, they've been like, there's no way I'm doing this. Like, we're just going to wait till this all ends and I'm going to go lead in person. I'm happy to report though, because we've been able to provide a lot of phone calls and a lot of Zoom calls to those facilitators and walk them through. And that was another learning curve, Carolina, was really spending and investing a lot of time in walking people through how to use these tools. Okay, log on. Do you have enough bandwidth at your house? Do you have a microphone, a camera? What operating system are you using? Like all those things you typically don't think about, making sure that people have those in their homes so they could lead. Not only lead the groups, but participate in the groups. So once we got through that, and once those facilitators that at first were a bit apprehensive got through the first 2 weeks of a new support group we started, now we give what's called a facilitator feedback form after every group as a check-in to find out how was the sharing, how many participants attended, et cetera, et cetera. We are getting such great feedback from those facilitators.
Wow.
We were very apprehensive.
Right.
They're like, oh my gosh, like this is working. Like it's vulnerable, it's authentic. People are sharing, they're connecting. They're blowing up on the group me app in between groups, sharing encouragement for the day and, loving on one another. And they just can't believe how well it is working. Again, it's not going to be the same as meeting in person. But one of the things we've had to do, and I think this will best explain it, Carolina, is we have had to accept our own limitations, right? In our new normal, many of us, and I know you well, we perform way here. And now we've transitioned to home and transitioned programs and workloads and programming. And we need to understand that being at home, that we really working from a different paradigm, that we really have to accept our limitations and show grace. Right?
Yeah.
That we can't be expected to be way up here. Even though many of us run up here, and I'm struggling with it because I'm like, what else can we do? Like, we got to do more, we got to do more, we got to do. And it's like, yeah, but I also need to accept my limitations, that this is COVID-19 work. This isn't like before it, right? Where we're working and have, working all these crazy hours and inventing and producing. But because we're limited to technology and can't meet in person and all these things, that has been the thing we've been sharing with our volunteers and our staff and our team and our board is we have to accept the realities of our new limitations in this season and be okay with that.
That's right.
Not going to be able to perform at 110%, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that people are not working or they're slacking. It just means that we need to accept those limitations. And I'm a dad, right? I have a 6-year-old son, Isaiah, and I'm married. My wife, even at home, getting a bit personal, she's a teacher for Long Beach Unified, and my son still needs to also go to school. And so she's having to teach. I'm working from home full time, and our son needs to learn. And what I've realized is that my life before was compartmentalized in some ways, where I drive to work. And I wear the hat and I come home and I take that hat off and I put my dad hat on, my husband hat on. Well, I wake up just like I would for work, but the reality is I'm wearing all 3 of those hats at once. Mm-hmm. I don't have the luxury of taking all of them up. I'm wearing all of them. And at any given moment, and you and I have been on Zoom calls when my son comes in, like that's just accepting the reality.
That's life. It's reality happening.
It's happening. And it doesn't mean that life still can be beautiful and the work we're doing still can be meaningful and fruitful. It's just going to look different. And so accepting those limitations of our new normal for us has been really, really helpful, and making sure that across the board that our clients and our stakeholders and everybody has clarity around that. And it's been
That's right.
People are
That's
getting
right.
it. So
Right. David, one of the things I've been a little curious about as it relates to the work and where New Hope is right now is the kind of collaborations and the kind of partnerships that you have during this time developed. And maybe it is because of the sense of urgency to connect to others quickly, to make sure that you have other referral pipelines in case the need comes to you. Tell me about the kinds of collaborations that you've seen really grow recently. Who are those new partners for you, or maybe there are relationships that have deepened because of everything that's going on right now?
Yeah, so I think across the board, any partnerships that we had pre-existing are definitely feel stronger, and more. We're relying on each other more. I want to give some live examples. So we partner with the Long Beach Trauma Recovery Center, and we partner with the Jewish Family Children's Services in Long Beach. And so we've had, when we work with bereaved people, we oftentimes work with a lot of widows and widowers. And automatically, when that happens, especially if it was a single home income, now there's one income. And you hope that there might have been life insurance, but if there wasn't, now it's an even more difficult situation. And then with COVID-19 hitting, when that spouse went back to work and into the workplace, they may or may not have been well off. They might have been at the poverty line or just above it, or trying to make ends meet, pay their rent, get food on the table, etc. So, we have seen calls coming in from our families saying, these are needs, like we have grocery needs, we're trying to pay this, we're trying to do that. Can you guys support us? One of the questions we had to ask ourselves is, are we going to pivot and move into this idea where we're now providing groceries or kinds of things? And that was a big question, right? Because that's really not our mission. Not to say that in the past we haven't stepped up and met a need here or there for a family, but really we rely on our community partners. And so JFCS and the Trauma Center have been really great because they are doing things like helping, to pay bills and to put groceries and gift cards in people's hands so that they can go get the necessities they need, diapers, formula, those kinds of things. And so we've been doing a lot of referrals to them for that. And we've also had some trauma kind of cases coming. So New Hope, we're a peer-based support model, right? We don't do one-on-one counseling or therapy.
Right.
They're partners we rely on. I just had we're partners with Poly Powell High School, and the Dean of Students reached out to me this week and shared that he had a student who was a graduating senior. She has experienced 6 deaths in the last month, and the last of which was her uncle who died due to complications of COVID-19. So this girl reached out to him, just to, for an 18-year-old girl to reach out, that tells you for a lifeline that she is struggling. Thankfully, again, our partners at at these places were able to then refer and get her connected to the teletherapy that she's going to require. And beyond that, there were some other needs, around food and those kinds of things, food insecurity, and those needs will get met. So really what I've seen is, I think what was most important, Carolina, was having those ties and those relationships and the foundation built. But this season, what we're seeing is because we invested in those relationships prior to this, we're now seeing and testing really how strong is the foundation. And we're really grateful and excited because we're finding that our structure and our foundations are firm and strong, and that when we're really needing to lean on each other, that there's no wavering, right? That we're receiving each other with open arms and receiving each other's clients and families, and are doing all we can to make sure that the process is seamless and that they're getting connected to the right resources as quickly as humanly possible.
Right. And thanks for sharing that. And I think you make a great point about how it really is during times like these that a lot of these existing relationships can also really deepen as well. And maybe you discover new dimensions to how you are working with your partners as well. And yes, I can see how schools are still fielding a lot of those maybe questions or calls for help, right, from students and from their family members. So, David, another question that we've been asking during the series is to get to know a little bit more about you and how you're dealing with all the pressures. You know, earlier you did talk about how having to wear the different hats, working from home, you don't necessarily have the luxury of being able to take one off and, put the other one on necessarily. So share with us what you're doing for self-care.
Yeah, that's great. So I have been intentional, and I've taken the mornings to start walking, actually. So I get up, because normally some of us, you might have to commute to work or for me personally, I got to get my son to school. My wife's a teacher. She leaves early typically, and then I take our son and go to work. So I've been taking this time to, one, let my wife sleep in, which gives her a little self-care. Then, gives my son a little cartoon time. We let him watch little cartoons in the morning, which he typically wouldn't get to do. And I've just been going on walks. So I've been able to get this. I found a 2-mile loop. I take that time really to just center myself and try and center my day. Doing some self-reflection. I actually stop halfway. I have this point where there's this really nice sitting wall, and I sit on the wall and I take a few minutes and I actually practice some of the meditation and breathing techniques that we actually teach in group to our clients. I'm trying to practice what we preach, and I've just been doing that, and that has been really helpful in me getting my day centered, because I know when I get home, then it's like back in the, get breakfast, get into the home office, but it gets my head right. And then another thing we've been doing is we all take lunch together as a family. So we break around noon, we eat lunch together, and we go on a bike ride. So having this family bike ride has been really great. We've actually had a few neighbors join us, and that, we're still practicing safe social distancing, but we're able to ride our bikes around and do that. And this week's been spring break. So for self-care, really, I think just, again, being with family, I mean, we're all experiencing that, right? That we're having more time with loved ones and people we care about. This week, because it was spring break, we did a camp out in the backyard. We had a water balloon fight and a water gun fight with our neighbors, which, again, you can still do social distancing.
I think that will encourage social distancing, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And, me and the other father got in on the action. We were running around with water guns, throwing balloons at the kids. We went through 500 water balloons. It was actually pretty awesome.
Wow. Okay. So moral of the story as well, if you want some water balloon fight tips, please contact David as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the final, really just trying to be conscious of what how we're eating, right? Lifestyle choices, just like trying to make better lifestyle choices around what we're eating and not eating. So that has been helpful, and just getting around the dinner table together has been
great. Well, thank you for that. It gives us a little glimpse into how you're personally dealing with, with the whole situation. So thanks for sharing that with us. David, is there anything that you would like to share with your other nonprofit colleagues? Anything that you would like for them to know at this point?
Good question. Yeah, I'm going to go back to what I kind of shared early on. Was like, look, guys, like, we don't need to suffer in isolation, and we can find healing in community. And I know that this too shall pass. That this is not going to be forever. That although the temporary feels very permanent right now, but that is going to go away. And as we define our new normal and what that's going to look like going forward for the nonprofit sector, that we as executive directors got to stick together. That we got to have each other's backs. That this is not a time now of competition, but collaboration. So that when we do get on the other side of this, that we will see not just that new normal, but what I believe is that we as the sector have a responsibility and can actually lead the way in what it looks like when we collectively put our resources together, put our time, treasure, talents together, and to really support those in our communities who are going to need us. And so just take care of yourselves now, because I actually believe that although this is hard now, Carolina, that I actually believe some of our hardest days are ahead of us after this, because there's going to be a lot of people who are on the front lines and in the trenches, and those who are losing loved ones that are going to require a lot of us, and whether it be from a mental health perspective, or insecurity of food or other things that I firmly believe that they're going to need us more in the future than they need us now, because we're limited right now. And so in the future, once we're able to go back out in the public and to get back to business as usual, that's when I believe the sector is going to see an influx of people needing support. And I just want to make sure that as executive directors that we're healthy, that we can lead our teams well, that we can lead by example, that we can be authentic and vulnerable, and just be ready to receive those folks who are going to need us. And if we can practice that now and get in the habit of that, that when that day comes and we know it's coming, that we will be ready to receive those people with open arms, and that we don't burn out from compassion fatigue and all those things that tend to get us. Now is the time, I think, to find that respite and to get prepared and to posture our hearts to be ready as a sector and as individuals and collectively. So,
well, thank you for those words of wisdom, David, which are very much in alignment to what you, I think, have been talking about this whole time as well, is to be very mindful, give yourself permission to fully embrace. And that means a lot, right? It means kind of fully embrace you, who you are right now as a person, as a professional, as a dad, as a mom, as a family member, as a caregiver, or if you are really home alone, to also allow yourself not to suffer in isolation. Don't let that happen if you can help that as well. And I think we heard that from you loud and clear today. So if anyone watching this video has any information or any questions and would like to contact David personally or New Hope Grief, you can contact the nonprofit partnership. But can you give us your general email that you share with everyone if they want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, I'll give my website, if that's okay. You can reach us on newhopegrief.org. Go there, all the info's there. You check out our social media platforms for any of the stay-at-home groups or bereavement support groups. And then, yeah, if you can reach out to me directly. I can be reached at, it's just David, my first name and the initial L, David L, at newhopegrief.org. And I'd love to hear from you. I'll answer any question or get you connected to services. We'd love to do that.
Excellent. David, thank you. Gracias.